In lesson 2, we're going to discuss board members' fiduciary duties to the organization on whose board they serve. There are two fiduciary duties which have to do with being loyal to the organization. Those are the duty of loyalty and the duty of care. The duty of loyalty means putting the interests of the organization above your own personal interests. This is probably most vividly illustrated by an example of where an opportunity comes to you as a board member that could benefit you personally as well as it could benefit the organization itself. An example of this, suppose you have a business with an office where you could use new furniture. You also serve on the board of a charity that has a need for office furniture. Somebody comes to you and says, I have some furniture that I no longer need, and I think that you've got a connection with an organization that could use them. Your response when you see the furniture is, I could use this for my own office. I would like to take it for myself. However, if the offer was made to you as somebody who is an insider with the charity, your loyalty belongs to the charity, and you should provide that option to the charity rather than take it for yourself. There's an even more complex issue if you're involved in two charities and somebody comes to you saying, I know you're involved in the charitable world. I have some furniture that I would like to give to a charity. Could you use them? You've got a real dilemma there, and that you've got loyalty to both organizations and there's a conflicting need. Well, you've got to resolve the issue. And probably the best way forward is to ask the person, which charity were you referring to? If they mention one, you could probably go with that one. If they say, I didn't know that this was a multiple choice question, what are the options? Then you could describe the two charities and say, you've got to pick the one that best meets your charitable benefit need and have them decide in that way. But the most important thing is your loyalty, first of all, goes to the charity when dealing with work that involves a charity, not your own personal interest. So while you may belong to the board of a charity because it raises your stature and prestige in your business, you still need to make sure when you carry out its functions, you're advancing the work of the charity primarily and not benefiting personally from it. The duty of care involves doing all those things that are necessary to be able to make decisions prudently and in a well-informed manner for the board on which you serve. That means not making decisions and taking a position on something where you don't have enough information, and that information could be obtained. Now, an important aspect of this is to know that it is reasonable when you're on the board to trust experts. For example, if you are not an accountant, you are not going to have the kind of knowledge needed to examine the financial records that an accountant would. But if an accountant reviews the records and renders an opinion, it's reasonable for you as a board member to rely on expert advice in order to carry out the work. This is really obvious in some situations, like if you work for a hospital or a medical provider and are not a physician, you can't possibly have the level of knowledge needed to determine what provides the best sort of medical care. But you can trust on the experts to provide that. Well, this is also true in regular, everyday kind of work. If you are involved in a service that provides food for the hungry, you can rely on those who have day-to-day experience in carrying out this work to know what is effective in meeting that need and what is not. Because physically, you cannot, as a director, find enough time to carry out all this work on your own. But the reliance that you have has to be based upon real, credible ability to determine what makes for good wisdom and advice and what is not. Uh, Interestingly, there are two very significant decisions by state courts that influenced the understanding of fiduciary duties very well. They're known, in case you ever run into these names, as the Caremark decision and the Marchand decision. These involved, in the Marchand case, whether a board had the competence with a business that operated an ice cream retail business to know whether the ice cream was actually safe or not. If that's the only business that the organization was in, the board should at least know whether the appropriate safety protocols were in place to make sure that the safety was good. That decision, interestingly, made the decision that, or made the comment that if an organization is carrying out its duty of care, it is also meeting its duty of loyalty. So these two ideas are very, very closely intertwined. What does this mean to you as a director on a charitable board? Well, you should do your homework. Don't make decisions in which you don't either have your own personal amount of information to make a decision, or you can rely on those whose advice is reasonable to rely upon in making the decisions that you carry out. In our discussion at the last video, we talked about the board's role in strategy, safety, and audit, and the fiduciary duties feed into these tremendously. We'll get into this in more detail in some of the later lessons, but meanwhile, consider that boards should be aware of the risks that an organization takes as part of its fulfilling each individual board member's fiduciary duties. So in carrying out this work, the board should go to great lengths to determine what risks are there faced by the organization. And those risks, we talked about a little bit in the last lesson, involve safety, both for personnel and for the material property, both real property and individual pieces of property, like automobiles, that are owned or controlled by the organization, as well as financial safety, planning and strategic safety, making sure the decisions aren't made that are reckless. Whatever the organization is involved in that involves a degree of safety, the organization should have a plan in place, relying upon experts that determine what the best and most safe way forward is. Once getting that information, the organization should have a reporting regimen in place. It's not enough to just delegate to members of the staff that they ought to look into safety and planning, but there should be regular reports to the board on whether those plans are being met, whether those plans are realistic, whether they're carrying out the need that needs to be met, and whether they're accomplishing the goals that have been set for them. So in monitoring whether the plan put in place is working, the board needs to receive reports, review reports, and respond to them. Those are the 3 R's in reviewing the feedback: receive, review, and respond. With these in place, the board has gone a long ways towards carrying out the activities that meet its fiduciary responsibilities in carrying out the work of board members.